Hey, I'm Mary.
And I'm Jake.
And you're listening to The Fly Angle, the official RDU Airport podcast. Welcome back. We have reached the 1-year benchmark of the Fly Angle podcast. We're at episode 10. Jake, I'm sure you would agree we're having a great time. I hope our listeners are as well.
Yeah, that year kind of flew by. Call it season 1 of the Fly Angle.
There you go. That's pretty awesome. So, Jake, we joined our friends from Knoxville and Austin for their most recent episode from the Runway Up for International Podcast Day.
That was really fun. So if you have listened to a few episodes now of the Fly Angle and you like what you hear, we are not the only airport podcast. Knoxville, Tennessee, TYS Airport, I believe they were the first airport podcast. I kind of learned about what they were doing at an industry event a few years back and have truly enjoyed what they've done to go behind the scenes at TYS and really kind of just share what daily life is like at their airport. Their show is wonderful. And then after us, Austin, Texas, one of my favorite cities in the world, AUS Airport, Austin Bergstrom, started their own podcast, and it is also tremendously well done. And they're going at a feverish pace, like episodes every 2 weeks.
They really are.
So the group of us all got together and did a special collaborative episode back on September 30th. Mm-hmm. You can stream it at fromtherunwayup.com. That's the Knoxville show. And just hear about that episode, what we kind of talk about, the behind the scenes of how we cut our podcast, how they recorded theirs, and just a little bit of, some fun inter-airport banter.
The big piece and the big takeaway always for me is our connection to our community and our engagement with you that listen and tune in and support us and like us. So we want to encourage that. We want to expand on that and learn more. And one of the ways we do that is airmail.
Yeah, so we have a good airmail question today. Our friend Brian, who appears to be kind of a trickster because he says he's Brian from Raleigh-Durham. And as many of you podcast listeners know, Raleigh-Durham is not a city, but an airport. So our friend from Raleigh-Durham asks, what does the U in RDU stand for? That's a great question, Brian. Mary, do you know the answer to this question?
No, I don't actually.
Oh gosh, this is gonna be fun.
I could maybe make up a couple things if you want me to.
So this was one of the first things I asked when I got here. Most people think that it stands for Durham. And so that's actually not true.
That was
not.
Kind of what I did think, but
some other people think that it stands for something like connecting the two cities, like United, which would be kind of a cool soccer name. I feel like Raleigh-Durham United, right? But it's not that either. So I did some digging and I found out the answer. In the 1960s, the FAA, who was responsible for assigning the 3-letter codes to commercial airports in the U.S., picked our 3-letter code. They picked RDU. There's actually no reason given for the U.
What?
There is no, it doesn't stand for anything. It sounds kind of like a bummer answer, but
we could just make up something.
So we could. So it could be whatever you want it to be. Pick a word that starts with U, and that can be it. Whoever was given that task at the FAA decided that RDU best fit Raleigh-Durham International Airport. If it were my money, I would have gone with RAD. RAD.
Well, wouldn't that be just that?
But I wasn't there, and so we're gonna go with RDU. And I think it's funny how it has become synonymous with our region.
Exactly.
And certainly, we always make the jokes probably once a month on Twitter, but as has Raleigh-Durham.
Exactly.
So,
it's so cool. It's a cool thing, though. It gave us, like you said, a unique identity, although it's often misleading. But now we know where the U comes from.
Yeah.
Or
doesn't come from. So, Mary, you want to get us into some headlines?
Surely. Passenger traffic at RDU has leveled off after a busy summer recovery. In fact, in August, the airport welcomed 880,000 departing and arriving passengers, Jake.
So that's down about 11% from July. And our Labor Day weekend was down a third from Labor Day 2019. So a whole 33%. That's really interesting. And so you've probably heard in the community, well, the airport's growing really fast. We were. Now we're not. We expect this trend to kind of stay flat through the holidays, which are typically busy, right? Mm-hmm. The airport's recovery really depends on the return of business travel. We've said that on a few episodes here in a row, and it remains the case. Our leisure travelers have come back, but business travel is slow to return. And so that will be the driver for things like bringing back our transatlantic flights. Those popular London and Paris flights really depend on the business traveler to justify their daily operations. So those are the indicators we're looking for internally, and hope that the community will be able to get back to that sooner rather than later, so we can kind of get back to quote unquote normal.
And carrying on, right?
Right. There you go.
There it is. Good news, more services are coming back to RDU and others are on the way. The airport saw taxis finally return mid-September. Now guests can arrange a ride with Taxi directly, or they can visit the taxi stand at either terminal. We're glad to have that taxi service back.
Yeah, that was a really critically unmet need that we're glad to get that box finally checked again. You know, whether you park with us or you get here via taxi or Uber or public transit, we're happy to see you. But,
yes, we are.
Definitely glad to get that taxi service back in. We are also excited about a new concept that's coming soon. This fresh off of a recent board meeting. It's a virtual kitchen, which I believe is one of the first, if not the first, in airports in the U.S. coming to Terminal 2. So what you'll be able to do as a passenger, you will be able to go to this location, which is, if you remember where the California Pizza Kitchen location was in Terminal 2, that's in the C concourse. You'll be able to pick from several brands on your phone, so call it an app or your mobile device, whatever it is, and grab your order from a secure locker once it's ready. That is really kind of a neat concept, and it has a lot of options.
A lot, like everything from maybe even like the minute you land, using that app to have your food ready, going through security if you've got a long line, having your cold or hot food ready, like a lot of things, cool things, right?
Yeah, that'll be local, that'll be national, international, brands you recognize, and then some that you're just are maybe your local favorites. But we don't have an opening date set just yet, so stay tuned.
Yes, I love our concessions team. They're always thinking out of the box, good stuff, localizing it. I'm so excited for this.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. And finally, J.D. Power came out with its airport traveler satisfaction report, and RDU Flyers had a lot to celebrate. RDU is ranked third for traveler satisfaction among all large airports. Go RDU.
Yeah. So I think this is the highest we have been ranked by J.D. Power, at least in this category. If you've followed this in years past, for a long time, RDU was in J.D. Power's medium category. Their line of demarcation between medium, large, and mega airports are passenger enplanements. So if we have a certain threshold that we've met, we'll go up a category. We did that and joined the large category, I believe, for the first time a couple of years.
2019.
Yeah, 2019 was the first time. And we were in the top 10, I believe, that year, or maybe even the top 5. This is the first time we've cracked the top 3. So we're competing with a lot of really popular airports, and New Orleans won the category this year. Tampa was second. We're third. So, that is a podium I think that we're happy to share with. We love our friends at TPA and over in New Orleans, and they're doing wonderful work, but we beat out a lot of really, really well-known airports.
Yes, we thank you for choosing RDU. It's customer satisfaction. We faced a pandemic, a lot of adversity this past year. So just knowing that our customers are satisfied with their experience here at RDU, it is world-class. We're going to continue that, and we're going to continue to try to get to number 1, right?
Yeah. If you want to learn more about how J.D. Power defines their list and what criteria they use, we have a blog post about it up on rdu.com. You can read all about it, or you can go to jdpower.com and learn how they use that criteria to rank these airports one by one. But anyway, we'll take number 3. That puts you on the podium, right?
That's
you get
right.
a medal around your neck.
We will take the bronze.
So we're really excited about today's guest. If you fly through RDU regularly, you're certainly familiar with our air traffic control tower, which is visible from just about anywhere at the airport. What you may not know is that there is another tower much closer to the terminals, but with an equally important role in aircraft movement. So with us today is the person who oversees a lot of that action from TBI Airport Management, Kyle Mitchell. Kyle, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me here today, guys. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, we're excited. Kyle, tell us, how did you get your start in aviation?
So it dates probably back to the 1950s. I'm actually a third-generation living pilot on my father's side.
Wow.
So my grandfather flew in the Army. My father joined the Marine Corps as a helicopter pilot, and it's just been a passion. So I'm very much into aviation. Got my pilot's license in, 2006. I was a freshman in college. Boy, that was quite the experience. But it just fascinates me. Just the fact that you see these big hunks of metal just flying above you, or I always compare it to a big barge. It weighs millions of pounds just floating in the water. Where a rock sinks. It just blows my mind. Stuff like that. So
Sure.
So it's just totally fascinating. So I've always been aviation. We're all ate up with it. So generally, most people at the airport share that vision, especially people listening too. They're the same way, and all they do is fly through us. They just visit. So it's super fun being in life all day. So
our motto here is, if you're not an aviation enthusiast already by listening to this, you will be by the time you're done. So.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're all nerds. We eat, breathe, sleep it. It's wild. We'll take the boat out on the lake. We'll go to Falls Lake on the north side of the airport, which is, for the aviation nerds, is the approach end of 2-3 right for the arrival routes for the commercial guys. And we'll hear the jets fly over, and I'll kind of mention, just look towards it, or just mention something. My friends say, go ahead and say it, and I'll say, oh, that's American 1197. It's coming from Charlotte. Scheduled arrival time of 11:40. It's an Airbus 319. I just rattle it off just from doing it for I've been here for almost 10 years. So
that's perfect.
And there's people here to put me to shame. There's FAA controllers been here for 30 years. So it's wild,
Sure.
but it's a great time. So it's just in the blood. So that's
Very
in a
cool.
nutshell. That's
Cool.
my background.
Yeah. Well, as Jake mentioned, a lot of people don't realize that RD actually has 2 towers. Can you describe the work you do in the ramp tower and how it's different from air traffic control?
Absolutely. So that's the biggest question we get. And it's actually really hard to explain to somebody. They ask what you do. It's almost easier just saying, I'm an air traffic controller. We're not. We're not the FAA. We are ramp controllers. So as they say, it's the ramp control tower. We're actually, if you look at it at Terminal 2, we face 5 left, 2, 3 right, the big runway. The easiest way to explain it, we had a retired American ramp controller in Raleigh here before we took it over in 2007 when the new terminal was built. He explained it best as a press box. It really looks very
That's
much
a good analogy.
very much like a press box.
Yeah.
So you can really see it. You see our big tinted windows up there, and we have
Suppose
good.
that makes you the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, exactly.
Ah,
Yeah, the play caller.
seriously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And literally, when I've been in there, you guys literally have the planes, like the manipulatives to move around in the
the
same way,
pucks.
the X and
Yeah.
O. So yeah.
Exactly.
Really?
It's very, very similar. So a lot of people think, well, wait a second, there's a lot of gates that you can't see, or they're on the back side. And I say, oh, RDUIS really takes care of us. So every gate at Terminal 2 and Terminal 1 has CCTV cameras. There are numerous cameras. We have access elsewhere. We can physically have vision and oversight of every gate, what's going on in the gate space. And we'll use a lot of that to our advantage, not just for moving jets, but making sure the gate's available. Is there any equipment parked in the way, any FOD, any debris sitting
Sure.
out there, so on and so forth.
A lot of that last mile stuff that the air traffic control
Exactly.
can't really be.
Exactly. Air traffic control is the highway patrol. There are state troopers. They do a great job out there. And we essentially, once you get off the interstate, say you're going to Walmart, we can give you the directions on how to get in the parking lot, how to get to row E, spot 9. That's your spot. I dedicated that spot for you 3 weeks ago, and it's your spot for this time to this time, so we're really sounds terrible almost, but we're really the parking lot cops, essentially. That's the easiest way to boil it down. But if you think about it, we move the most amount of jets in the most confined spaces too, so it gets very cumbersome. So
Sure.
Wow.
I imagine other airports, whether they're our size, smaller, bigger, do they also have ramp towers as well?
It depends on the size, and the answer is usually yes. So once you get to the really smaller regional airports, if you get in some that only have a few gates, or
like Albert Ellis in Jacksonville or something.
right, or Asheville or somewhere like
Sure,
that.
yeah.
They usually don't. It's usually just push at your own discretion. It's what they call an uncontrolled ramp. It's a non-movement area, which is obviously where we do all the controls on the non-movement area. We do not control the FAA taxiways. We don't control the runways, nothing like that. That's all FAA. We coordinate with them. We have a push button. We can talk to them. They call themselves a big tower. We call ourselves a little tower. And so we'll say, go ahead, little tower, when we talk on the radios. And we'll just do our coordination there. Well, the good point is, too, which we were talking about earlier, was a lot of the hub airports, the airlines will run their own towers. So at a lot of airports, Charlotte, Atlanta,
Sure.
Miami, you go into Dallas, American Airlines or Delta Airlines will have their ramp towers because they usually either own their gates or wholly lease their gates too, so they get to make the decisions on it, and they can physically do the pushbacks.
So here at RDU, where we have a kind of a healthier mix of airlines,
Yes.
it could make sense for a third party to
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
So we don't look at paint jobs. Nobody gets priorities. It's passengers and bags. We want to move everybody listening, everybody that enjoys flying. I want to move you as safely and efficiently from one destination to the other. That's our primary job. So having a third party that has no affiliation with either the airport or the airlines is very effective. And that's where we specialize in that, moving the jets and then getting into some of our other aspects.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. So the ramp tower clearly takes on a number of different functions that might not surprise people, but some that may surprise people. Walk us through some of those things that you're coordinating with the aircraft. Like, for example, it sounds like you're communicating directly with the pilots once they're taxiing back towards the terminal, right?
That's correct. So on arrival, it's they'll talk to the FAA on tower once they get local. Usually it's within about 10 miles. They'll talk to the FAA tower. They'll clear them to land, get them on the runway. They'll turn off the runway and talk to the FAA ground frequency. That's who moves the jets around once they get off the ramp. So RDU has a dozen plus taxiways, and it looks like a big maze. If you're not familiar with it, I'm sure most people have probably taxied over just about all of them. But and then FAA ground will hand them off to us and say contact the ramp tower, and they'll give them our frequency, and then we'll give them entry points, taxi, instructions on where to get to the gate, maybe if the gate's occupied, where we're going to hold them at. So it gets
blame Kyle when you're holding on the tarmac, right?
Everybody asks this question. I'm already ready for it.
It's not the communication staff or RDU authority staff. It's Kyle.
That's
and
right.
His team.
Yep. And it's not always me. I mean, so don't get me wrong.
At the end of this podcast, we'll give the address for Kyle. No,
don't get me wrong. There's times where we do have to hold jets just because physically we have no more gate space.
Sure.
We're at capacity at peaks.
And that's an increasing challenge here.
Absolutely. But there's also times where an airline will request to hold an aircraft out. If they don't have a ramp crew to work the jet, they're not going to park the jet, obviously. So there are scheduled holds for other reasons too. So a lot of it boils down in just the operation. And that's why I like this, is the more you know, the more you can understand. So I tell my staff, if an airline's going to hold a jet, ask them why. What's going on? They say, oh, well, this jet doesn't have an APU. It's an auxiliary power unit. It's like a generator. Right. So they need a gate that has one built into it. And if the gate it's assigned to doesn't have one, they say, we need it to go to another gate, so let's hold it until this other aircraft pushes. So there can be a lot that goes into the decision making. Like I said, the staffing, they may not have the equipment, they might not have the above wing personnel to hook up the jet bridge or whatever the case may be. So not putting any shade at the airline by any means, but there's a lot of reasoning and that goes into it. It could be, the jet bridge could break. There's a maintenance team here that solely works on jet bridges, air conditioning units, power units, so on and so forth. They work, on a slew of items. So there's so many different reasons. So I tell my staff, get outside the tower. Let's really go dig into why. And the more my guys know, the better they can do their job.
That's absolutely fascinating. I just walking around the terminals when I first started working here, you can clearly see like the markings on the ramp where like a certain gate can only take certain aircraft of certain size. But hearing things like that, like that one aircraft might not be able to take a gate because of a generator that it needs to have access to is something that certainly I would imagine somebody in the cabin, like a passenger, would never know about.
Right.
I get the text from a friend, or say I'm sitting on the ramp at Raleigh, or I'm sitting wherever, Charlotte or wherever, Atlanta, Miami, and I say, what is going on? I said, and the possibilities are just of why you're sitting somewhere. It's like me asking the question, why are you sitting in traffic? Why is I-540 East a mess at 5 o'clock? I mean, we're all trying to go to the same place, same time. Everyone wants to get there, and it's always the same peak travel days and times. So it's very similar in aviation. It's just instead of sitting on the asphalt, you have a block of airspace reserved for you, and you have to wait 45 minutes before that airspace physically catches up to you over top of Raleigh.
Well, it's interesting just that, like as you mentioned, the technical aspects of it. I was flying out the other day, and I was on a bigger jet, and they were just saying if we were at a different gate that you could bring the jet bridge around to a second part of the plane so that you bypass first class and you can kind of quickly board. And I was like, whoever even knew that?
And they used to have 7-4 gates that would board the top side of the aircraft and the bottom side of the aircraft. And a lot of the airlines they'll hook up to what they call, if you're on an Airbus 321 or a 75, which has dual boarding doors on the left side, they'll hook it to the back. They call it the two left doors, the second door closest to the engine. Yeah. That way, first class passengers to the left, crew to the left, coach, business class, everybody else to the right. There's a lot of people that don't get their elbows bumped, when people are walking past them with carry-on. So there's a method to the madness. And even I was new to this 10 years ago, and I still learn things. It blows my mind. I really really enjoy getting to learn all the aspects of it.
Jake and I say that almost every single podcast.
So we talked about this a bit earlier, but yeah, we do get the question a lot, probably almost more than any other question, about how gate assignments work. Walk us through like exactly, so whether it's before the pilot gets passed over to your frequency or at that moment, what goes into gate assignment here at RDU?
So as you know, Terminal 2, 36 gates, Terminal 1, 9 gates. Terminal 1's much more simplistic. There's one airline and then 5 common use gates over there. So we can already start off the conversation with what's common use and what's a preferential, what's a lease gates. We talk about those right off the bat. Why is
Our
America...
listeners are slightly familiar because we've had some guests to talk about it.
Good,
They're prepped. They're
good.
ready
Okay,
for you.
okay. We don't have to dive. We won't go into the weeds yet. I'll try to keep it, a little higher level. So there's a reason why American's always on the Charlie gates. They have preferential gates. Those gates are not leased by the airline, but they have first right to those gates. So the airline can dictate how they want to gate it, why they want to gate it. And it goes back into, does the jet fit at the gate? Does it restrict the gate next to it? Does it have a functioning air conditioning unit in the summertime? Does it have a water unit to refill the water on the jet? So on and so forth.
Is there a checklist that you follow to keep track of all? Because it seems like
There
a ton
is.
of, yeah.
There is. So we have a common use system. It's that we use is called SITA. SITA. Please take a look at it. It's a very robust system, and it manages all the common use facilities. So not only does it do all the gate management, we also manage all the baggage belts. That's makeup and reclaim. So the belts that are behind those check-in counters when you drop your bags off for bag drop before you go TSA, we manage those belts too.
Wow.
All the displays for the check-in counters, baggage makeup, baggage reclaim, hey, your American flight 5141 to bag claim 5, we assign that as well. So it's all part of the common use system. So the idea is any airline can use any gate, any check-in counter, any bag belt at any time for any reason. People say, well, what are some of the reasons? Say, well, a few years back, RDU had to replace one of the power grids on the D Concourse Terminal 2. We literally had to put every jet we had on half the terminal. So I know United's used to the D gates, but we had to accommodate them on the C gates, which we talked about getting into towing and RONs and how do we make it all fit and how do we make it work. So really, when it hits the fan is when we really start doing our jobs very intensely.
I'm going to guess that you played a lot of Tetris as a kid.
Yes, but until I came here, I didn't play Tetris with $100 million jets.
Sure.
Right.
So, and then we don't even get into, we don't even get into, oh, by the way, there's 230 passengers on board. There's 30,000 pounds of fuel. We try to think about that. But, it really comes full circle when we fly. We'll push jets back. We talk to pilots. We ensure the system's operating. Common use is working the way it needs to be. We want to move passengers safely and efficiently. But when you fly, it comes full circle. You forget about, the flight attendants making their announcements, the safety procedures. We forget about the spiel.
All the things we take for
Yeah,
granted.
the captains, when they tell you the weather, where your destination's at, how long your flight is, just things we don't even process. When you're taxiing, you're going from concrete pad to concrete pad, which, by the way, they're brand new on the ramp. Boy, that was a good common use fiasco, too. RDU did a great job replacing concrete. When you feel the bumps, and it's just something that comes full circle, like, wow, I completely forgot about that, because all we literally do is sit in the town. We see jets move. We don't hear them very rarely. Unless it's the military stuff. That's the fun stuff that you see coming in and out. But
Yeah, you hear them before you see them.
and then, boy, that's when my
Facts.
phone really lights up. People say, what's at the airport?
Yep.
But that's what we really enjoy, is being to participate in it, too. And, the big satisfaction is knowing that you can move upwards of, 24,000 passengers in one day. And, most everybody made their connections. Everybody got there safely. There were no incidents, no issues. And that's really, when you get to where you're going, say, man, there's so much that goes into it that we just take for granted or don't even think about. So most times when people say ramp control, what's the ramp control tower? And they come in and say, I didn't even know y'all were here. And then generally people, they don't want to leave.
Yeah. And expanding on that, great segue, ramp tower plays an active role during severe weather. Can you talk a little bit about your responsibilities, how they change on a day like a hurricane prep or something of that nature? Storm prep?
Sure, absolutely. So starting off with, the airport authority works hand in hand with NOAA, National Weather Service, the airport authority, and the operations team really keep an eye on that and prep it, obviously. Severe weather does impact aviation. And then, of course, airlines don't want very expensive jets getting out here and being damaged by any type of high winds or nasty weather. So for, a hurricane prep, usually we're looking at, the pattern when anybody else does, not before the milk sells out in the gas station and grocery stores, but we're usually looking at hurricanes 4 to 5 days out, sometimes more. And then, usually the airport authority will hold meetings, and there's 200 people in a room, or we're on the calls, and it's John Graves, our director of airport ops here, is usually, taking the briefing from the National Weather Service and then going over, the patterns, predictability, what we can do. And the planning phase gets very important at that point, is when we start asking the interactions with the airlines. What's the flight schedule going to look like? Are we going to cancel flights? When are we going to start canceling flights? Are you going to leave your Ron jets here? And it even boils down to stowing their equipment. Is you don't want a big bag cart rolling around the ramp at 80-mile-an-hour winds. When you have
down that roll away,
$100 million jets sitting around on the ramp. So it gets very important. So even ELS, Elite Line Services, maintains the jet bridges. They'll stow the jet bridge back. They'll turn the the boarding part of the jet bridge towards the terminal so it doesn't get damaged. So there's a lot of prep that goes into it. Airport operations will go out and they'll take down the windsock or so on and so forth. There's so much that goes into it, and that's just for hurricanes. We haven't gotten into the big
DeIcing.
Yeah, the big one we're rolling into. Exactly. I was going season by season. We're in hurricanes. Let's talk about snow and ice. Then we'll talk about, then we can get into the bad ones, thunderstorms. But so snow and ice is the exact same way. So we predict the storms, what we're going to get, how it's going to work. And I'll tell you, RDU's maintenance teams does a fantastic job. They're basically the DOT here, where they spray the runways, the taxiways, the sidewalks are salted. They set it all up to where we can still operate. And jets will still fly in snow. Don't get me wrong. They will de-ice the jets to get all the snow off the wings.
And so you're doing things like managing like the ingress and egress between like the de-icing pads to the taxiways.
Absolutely. So it gets into this big debate isn't it just easier to de-ice a jet at a gate? And you think about it, and then de-ice fluid's glycol. It's an alcohol-based substance. It's almost like slime.
Sure.
So you say if you spray it and you spray the jet, where does it all end up? It ends up on the ramp, and it's a safety concern for a lot of the rampers. But the easy part is if you spray it at the gate, you don't have to go anywhere to a de-ice pad. I'm sure everybody's pushed back from Raleigh or any other city and had to go to a de-ice pad, wait in line, shut down the engines, get sprayed off, and then go back out. It can be challenging, but for the airlines, it can be safer as well. You have one centralized area, everybody sprays. That's where it works. And generally, the airlines can do it either way.
So are you all coordinating with them? Are you communicating with the pilot to say, okay, are you almost there? Or ops is saying that you can go taxi now? Is that the type of conversation that you're having?
We can dig in the weeds. We can. So we'll ask the flight crew, obviously, we ask if they're going to de-ice. Or if they've already de-iced. We log that. We record that for the airport authority. So we have a track every day, how many jets de-iced. And then if we can even try to put in how long it took them to de-ice. So we try to track delays or time on the ground to try to figure it out to keep everybody moving as efficient as possible. And once they'll confirm or deny if they need to de-ice, it's getting them pushed off the gate, taxiing them to our transfer control point at the FAA. Once we go from the parking lot, essentially, back to the main road to get on the interstate, is the runway. The FAA will take them to the de-ice pad. If it's not on our ramp, there is one that ties into the ramp. Delta will spray on the south end of the terminal, and they'll de-ice down there. And we actually, this is a good fact, RDU Airport Ops will NOTAM close. A NOTAM's kind of like issuing an advisory to say, hey, we're closing this part of this taxiway. So taxiway Foxtrot right next to 5 left is closed, and that's where Delta de-ices their jets, and we have control of it. So once they note them it closed, the FAA no longer has control. We take it over, and we'll taxi Delta down there. So the challenge gets in then is, okay, well, the big push, Delta's moving 6 jets at 6 a.m. So we can only fit 2 in the de-ice pad, so we're pushing 2 jets off. It's always first come, first serve. So we'll move them in the order they call. We'll get them down there. And then we'll start queuing other jets. So we'll try to get them off the gate as quickly as possible and hold them in a staging area. But at times you're just so congested because we're talking about one airline. We're moving 10 airlines at Terminal 2 where it gets busy.
And having seen this in person, it's really hard to describe and paint the picture. But it is a complicated ballet. You talk about those 6 jets. I mean, once you de-ice, you only have a period of time before
That's
you
right.
might have to de-ice.
If you're
again.
type 4ing, so there's de-ice and anti-ice. So de-ice is orange. That's if the wings it doesn't, and you don't have to even be in snow. De-ice is frost. So any type of frozen precipitation on the wings, or what we call any type of the airfoil, something that creates lift, and anything that's on there that disrupts that smooth airflow can reduce lift. A very big safety issue. So there's times that the airlines will just defrost. They call it de-icing. That's type 1 glycol spraying, and that's orange fluid. So you can always know if it's just cold outside that night and you're getting sprayed with orange, that's de-icing. And then there's anti-ice, which is what you're talking about, Jake. So that's green. It's a much thicker like slime. Like if you watch Nickelodeon as a kid and you're getting sprayed with that green stuff, that's the nasty stuff, really thick. And generally the airlines want to spray that as close to the runway as possible, because from the second they stop spraying, they have 30 minutes to get off the ground.
Wow.
And if they can't make it, they have to come back and get more. And it happens.
Yeah.
So now the pilots are talking to us and the ramp control tower, trying to get their queue into the de-ice pad. They're talking to their airline operations, and they're also talking to the FAA, because like we talked about earlier, what's my wheels up time? Is there any flow to Charlotte, Atlanta, LaGuardia, DC, wherever they're going? So they have to coordinate a lot of things. So there's times where it's tough. They've had to come back and spray a few times. I feel bad for those passengers that are on those jets, but the airline does everything they can. But the biggest thing here, it's safe. We have to make sure everybody gets there safely. So
Keep you on your toes.
I think we're clearly getting the
Into the
benefit
weeds.
of the ramp. Yeah.
Wow.
I think we're clearly getting the benefit of the ramp tower now. And I have one great question after hearing all these great stories. What's the most memorable experience you've seen from up there at, outside the Charlie Gates at the ramp tower?
That's tough.
You've seen a lot, but what's the coolest thing you've seen?
I think we touched on it a little bit earlier. Don't get me wrong, I love commercial aviation. I love that we see Gulf Streams every day. I came from a very small regional airport where we thought was the coolest thing to see, a Hawker or a Citation or a Lear, but we saw a gorgeous black Gulf Stream. A couple days ago, it came in, went to the ramp. I'm sure it was going to I think NC State and UNC were both in town last weekend. Forgive me if anybody's feeling a little heartburn right now. I think UNC lost.
We both are hurt, but we're just not going to talk about it.
But even football season short-lived around here.
But even that's not the coolest part. It's not seeing, SAS has the BBJ. They have a 737 400. It's just a little bit smaller 737 than what Southwest flies. That's not even the coolest thing we see. The coolest thing is when we overlook 5 left, 2 3 rights, the 10,000-foot runway. It's, we're front and center for it. The only people who have better visions, the FAA. It's the military stuff.
They are mind-blowing.
It's Air Force One. It's when they were here recently, and it's the prep work coming into that. It's seeing the Secret Service, all the black trucks everywhere. They actually stage in crash fire rescue in the firehouse. So, you'll see the C-17s day before was at the motorcade, but. It's not just that. North Carolina is a military state.
Right.
So, it's Seymour Johnson with the Air Force. So they bring in plenty of jets, and seeing them do low passes, or they call them low approaches, which is really, they're buzzing the tower. They're shooting the approach at Raleigh, trying to get a little bit of time and a little bit of experience. But seeing 3 of them do it at the same time, 100 feet apart,
incredible.
At 200 knots or plus, just depending on the airspace or airspeed restrictions. But that's the cool part. And then the Marines out of Camp Lejeune, you get to see the Ospreys. Nobody ever sees those. And it's
one of my favorite birds.
Yeah, it's one of the coolest things is the rotor blades are so big. And it's cool. So you'll never know, are the rotors going to be fully tilted forward? Are they going to be half turned? Are they going to be hover taxiing? If you've never seen an Osprey, they're out of Camp Lejeune. The Marines fly them. Google search it. It's a V-22 Osprey. It's spelled just like the bird, the endangered bird. But those are so cool to see, and the Marines will bring them in. And then, of course, you got to give props to our own National Guard here with the Apache, and not just Apache. They're longbows. They're attack helicopters. They're suited out. So we'll hear their call signs too. You always hear super cool call signs. Like I said, I'm not busting up on the airlines or the general aviation guys, but the military, they always have just these like super, Victor 7-2 or whatever the call sign is.
Yeah.
It's just fun seeing them come in. And then, of course, like I say, every time they'll do a low approach, or even if it's just takeoff or landing, my phone just lights up. Everybody wants to know, hey, who is it?
Oh yeah,
A lot of people who listen to this podcast probably understand it, but the layperson may not. The military doesn't exactly share their mission details with us before they do it.
Exactly.
We obviously accommodate those requests when we get them. But we can't. We usually are not able, and typically wouldn't anyway, share the details in advance of it happening. So when we, typically the first time I hear about a Harrier or an Osprey flying by is because I feel my window rattling first.
And we
then
go
I see it
running.
go
Jake and
by.
I literally go
Yep.
running to our balcony to
Yep.
try to get a shot of it or just to see and have that experience.
Yeah. So instead of just answering 20 texts or 10 phone calls, I just snap a picture or a quick video, post it to social media. Hey, if y'all didn't see it, here's the 2 V-22s that just didn't approach in.
Jake,
But-
he wants to help us with our job again. We'll send all those inquiries.
Yeah,
his
absolutely.
way.
Yeah, right click save. I give full permission for RDU to steal my videos off Facebook. But because my father's an ex-military, he's a retired Marine, so I got to give a shout out. So we talked about the Air Force out of Seymour Johnson. The Marines are out of Cherry Point, and they're out of Camp Lejeune.
Right.
But you also have the Army out of Fort Bragg. They'll bring stuff up too. And then
And even with our National Guard.
yeah, exactly.
right
Yeah,
next door.
the Air National Guard here, and then we'll even get the Navy. They'll come out of Virginia Beach area. They'll come out of Norfolk too, and they bring in. You see, the Navy's completely different. You'll see a lot of refuelers. So you'll see a P-8 Poseidon, which looks like a 737, but it's got the big tail boom hanging off the back, so they can do mid-air refueling for their fighter jets or whatever the case may be. So there is just a whole bunch of traffic that comes in to Raleigh, and what I like to think is the reasoning is obviously the RTP, the area, the military, the colleges, universities, but I also think, and this gets into weather too, is geographically where we're located. We're halfway up the corridor of I-95, halfway between Maine and Miami. It's right here in Raleigh, and then we're right here at the intersection of 40 and 95. So it's just we're
Diversion
exactly.
central.
So here we talk about diversions. Is we're literally a 20-minute flight from Charlotte. It's American's East Coast hub. We're about a 50-minute flight to Atlanta for Delta's hub, and then if we just want to talk about a little bit further north is Dulles. United has a huge hub in Dulles. That's really only about an hour and 10-minute flight. I may be off on a little bit of this. Forgive me on the times. But and then once you get into New York City, boys, it's tough. That's a tough place to get in and out of. Which, don't get me wrong, thousands of flights a day get in and out of there. But once you hit that 5 o'clock traffic, we're having thunderstorms in Raleigh. There's thunderstorms northeast. It becomes tough. And I promise you, we are not sitting up there just making you wait because we're drinking coffee. 100%. We're doing we really turn the stress levels up, and we will do everything we can to get everybody moving as quickly and as safely as possible.
That's awesome. Kyle, I have thoroughly enjoyed learning so much. I'm sure that our listeners would echo that. Just thank you for what you do and for being one of our business partners here at the airport and for schooling me a little bit.
We love it here. Part 2, please. Y'all request part 2.
Don't be surprised if Jake and I pop up over there at the ramp tower.
Bring some donuts, and I can talk about this for 6 hours. You will say you have the coolest job in the world. Now, I kind of feel like a jerk saying. I say, I know.
You definitely have,
right.
well, there's one thing we can all agree on. You definitely have the best office view.
Absolutely. Yeah, we sit about 50 feet on top of the terminal there. So like I said, we may not be looking right at your window, but wave at us. We appreciate that stuff every now and then.
Thank you, Kyle.
Cool. Kyle Mitchell, thanks
Absolutely.
again.
Well, that was a great interview with Kyle. Episode 10 is in the books. I mean, he's just pretty well-rounded, pretty dynamic guy.
Yeah, not only is he really passionate about aviation, but I learned so much through that conversation.
Exactly.
Kyle has been really awesome to work with here. There are so many people around the airport who just live, breathe, eat, and sleep aviation, and he is just a wonderful resource to RDU. We definitely love having guests on the podcast from the operations side and from the day-to-day logistics side, and hope you guys are enjoying that as well.
And if you are enjoying it, please submit your airmail questions to us at communications@rdu.com.
Yeah, let us know what you want to hear. We absolutely thrive on getting feedback from listeners, from flyers, from pilots, from flight attendants. Whatever your walk of life is, we'd love to involve you more in the podcast and make sure that we're really reflecting the community, not just telling people what's happening here at the airport, but kind of just shining a light on how we interact with the community as a whole, too.
Absolutely. And while you're at it, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Wherever you're listening, please keep in touch.
Till next time.
We'll connect with you again soon. Take care.